All right, we are recording. So thank you everybody for coming. I sure appreciate it. My name is Heather Bittner. I am the Digital Marketing Program Manager here at the Chamber. And our guests have been so gracious to share their secrets of smashing it on social media with us. So we have some prepared questions, but then we should have some time at the end too, if you have questions for them. So our guests were selected because they are doing really well. Their numbers are really high in social media, and that's something that we do occasionally look at with our members especially. So thank you so much for joining us, each of you. Let's start off. I was hoping that each of you would introduce yourselves and tell us what your business is and how long you've been cultivating your social media presence. So maybe we could start off with Aaron and we'll just go down the line.
Sure. My name is Aaron Ostrom. I'm one of the owners of Pacific Outfitters. That's my primary job. We also have a Bigfoot Adventure Academy that does tours and guided trips and firearms training, and then we also have Back-Out Green too. But I help run the social media and all those platforms. Pacific Outfitters has been cultivating our social media since about 2011. It's been quite a ride since then. It's like the never-ending learning curve. Once you got it figured out, they change it on you and you gotta figure it out again. But I'm glad we did it.
Thanks, Aaron.
Nick Baum-Crawford. I'm the Executive Director of Humboldt Made. So we're an economic development nonprofit. We service the entire county, so we represent basically any maker. So that's a very broad term. So I represent anything from farms to service providers to small businesses and the jewelry maker that's operating out of the garage. So I manage our own accounts. We also do large-scale event production, which that's one of our heaviest uses of social media. Our biggest event series is Friday Night Markets in Old Town. And then I also am contracted to run other people's social media for them. And I currently have 6 of those. And so the combined following with those 6 accounts is around 258,000.
Thanks, Nick.
Thomas Nicholson Stratton. I am the part of social media that you don't usually see. Or if you do see it, it's because he's objectifying me in some way.
For Foggy Bottoms Boys.
Yes, Foggy Bottoms Boys is where I'm here for what I'm here for. Really, my husband and I work together on social media. I'm on the insights side, kind of understanding when things are actually ticking up and making sense, and Cody shares that information with me back and forth, and we talk about how that affects our business, and actually sales is what we do. So I'm more of the sales ends of things. I've been cultivating it since 2016, but both of us have had individual pages that we've run for different organizations. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Added TikTok 2 years ago. So under the Unorthodox Farm Daddy, which then funnels people into Foggy Bottoms Boys because Thomas didn't trust my content creation.
We're starting the argument right now.
My name is Ashley Bellis. I'm the owner of Ashley Seafood, and we've been doing social media since we started in 2018.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay. I wanted to ask each of you, how did you determine your marketing strategy prior to getting started, or did it develop organically? So was there a plan, or did it just develop organically? You want to start with us, Nick?
Sure. We've been around for quite a while, over 50 years. It was founded by a few HSU grads with degrees in oceanography, not business or marketing. So I think this whole time we've been figuring it out organically. Yeah, it's just, let's see.
Do you have a strategy now that you work with?
Our strategy, yeah. We use our company communications calendar. We created a communications calendar that has all our seasons of our departments that we have. It also lists out all events that we participate in, either or host ourselves. in addition to national holidays, and from that we'll develop a marketing strategy. And once we have a campaign, then we tailor the campaign to the specific customers that we want to advertise that campaign to. And with our point of sale system we can pull specific people. We don't want to be advertising firearms to our Patagonia customer, or so we're able to pull data from our customer base to make sure that they're seeing the stuff they want to see.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nick, how about you?
Yeah, so with Humboldt Maid's accounts, like on their own, it's a little bit of a different animal than the for-profit commercial accounts that I manage. Marketing a nonprofit's a little bit, you're not selling a product, you're selling a mission. And so that really relies on a pretty deep level of storytelling and providing like sense of place for people to link that story to. So with Humboldt Maid's account, you'll see kind of this pattern of me showcasing the region and the sense of place because we're representative of the entire county. And then there will be moments from our members and then moments that are like illustrating community activities. And so that kind of like emotionally ties the bow for people that are seeing the social media. And that really is meant, the intention of that is to kind of bring this engagement up within our account and then ultimately pass them off over to our membership. With the for-profit accounts that I run, and I have a big background in hospitality, and so took the same kind of approach that I did with all of those accounts that I started up over the last 20 or so years, and really start by identifying like the three, however many it is. For me, I usually go with 3 main buckets that I work with. So anything that, like any goal that we're trying to meet. For the restaurants, that was usually food and beverage, environment or atmosphere, or what we would just call vibe, and then community. And so then once you like simplify it down into like these get it down to as few of these mission buckets as possible, it's really easy to like calendar out your entire social media program for as long as you want. And you just decide on a formula, so it's 30% vibe and 40% food and beverage, whatever you want. And then that equation basically denotes what you're posting. That's what I usually go with. I go with bucketed targeting is what I call it. And then for the nonprofit side, it's a focus on storytelling and emotional engagement.
Excellent.
And I won't speak to the chaos in which I try to wrangle as far as strategy, because Cody is very creative and unique, and typically what's happening on the farm is what's happening in the moment. A lot of what you're doing now is curating, but I'll speak to the consulting side of what I get to do with Rumiano Cheese, who is our processor. So we work with them closely, and I get to work with them on their brand development and their extension of their voice, specifically being that we are the farmer and we're able to identify and clarify perspective pretty quickly. And for a term there, I was doing all of the customer service handling. And so understanding the perspective in which the consumer is calling and the reasons why they are calling was an opportunity for me to create that understanding of what voice and perspective these folks are listening to. At the same time, it was giving me opportunity to prevent measures in which they're connecting us and to start conversations in which they should be connecting with us. So that's typically sales if you're thinking about a for-profit business. And in this case, what we're trying to do, and speaking to the point of what Nick was sharing, is storytelling. Because what's differentiating us as a small manufacturer of cheese, small to medium-sized manufacturer of cheese in Rumiano, and us being producers, around 26 different producers, it's really easy for us to tell a story that differentiates our product versus what other product they're seeing on the store shelves, whether or not that's other organic product or other differentiated and value-added products that come from those specialty unique landscapes. So in the rebranding that Rumiano just has performed, you will notice that it's very much more leaning into the bucket of sense of place. And so we are leaning into 1 out of 5, depending on a ratio of output. So whatever we're doing, we're still keeping it at a ratio of 1 to 5, whether it's 2 times a week or 4 times a week for posting, contests, you name it. One of those 5 times is going to be focused on the actual farmer and the landscape the farmer is engaging in, because that's part of the storytelling element. The rest of it, we're now really branching out into leaning into the branding, because it's telling that sense of story in that place, so it's connecting and it's creating that loop. So the strategy is that from just recognizing the brand and the change and what we're performing, we'll engage in social media followers, which we are seeing through some influencers and partnerships that we're able to encapsulate through small amounts of funding and just really free cheese. Just sending out free cheese to people so that they'll give you, video snapshots to put onto your story, or to get that really awesome photo that you never knew you were going to get, but you got for free because you crowdsourced it. So those are the strategies that we're introducing right now in that company.
I'll speak to Foggy Bottoms Boys. So Foggy Bottoms Boys is a little bit different in that we had the social media before we had the business. So our family's dairy has existed in its current iteration for almost 97 years, 160 years farming in the Eel River Valley. So the Jersey herd is called Foggy Bottoms Jerseys. The name Foggy Bottoms Boys came out of just what the other dairymen at the fair one year started referring to Thomas and I as. And I already had a fairly well followed Instagram at that point. So we just rebranded it as Foggy Bottoms Boys, and we're using it really to tell the story of family farms in Northern California, LGBTQ members of agriculture, just as representation. And sharing the story of farming, our brand grew more out of that as we added on pastured laying hens, grass-fed beef, started marketing our yarn. Yarn was really the first thing we marketed under the Foggy Bottoms Boys brand. And so the strategy is a little different in that the strategy was created before the product ever existed. So the strategy and our theme is not explicitly curated. You see a lot of Instagram accounts that are very curated. Every photo has the same color scheme. It's a very curated look. That's not what our brand is. It's more raw, it's more honest. The idea was always to share what it genuinely is to be in agriculture, and whether that's the great parts of new lambs on the ground or the terrible days when coyotes get into your flock of chickens. Those are the things that you are sharing, is like the very honest reality of farming. And so that has become our brand. It's a very honest, straightforward representation not only of agriculture, but of who we are as individuals, who our family is. And so when it comes to scheduling out posts, the challenge can be that it really does follow the season of the farm, right? So whatever's happening on the farm is kind of what's being posted. So if we're lambing, it can get very lamb heavy. But we're a farm that has cattle, sheep, poultry. And so we're trying to, while it's gonna be lamb heavy times of the year, we're also trying to make sure that every week there are other things that are being posted. Also always circling back to, we're selling grass-fed beef and lamb and eggs, so we need to make sure at least one post a week is highlighting that cut of beef. And also, tying in our analytics, who is following us and what they engage in, and so is that dance trends, is that, which for us is fun. So those are things that we can do that are fun, that bring people back to our brand. So our strategy tends to be kind of, if you were just to look at it, it seemed pretty like chaotic and all over the place. But the reality is it ties into the overall brand itself, just being a very honest representation of who we are as individuals and what our farm is.
I love that. How about you, Ashley?
I would say it's been pretty organic overall, and I've gotten better at a lot of things. Really talking about our story. We also fall into seasons as well. So we're doing crab, and then we transition over into salmon, and then halibut and albacore. And with each one of those is like a different stage of our stuff. We really focus on getting an emotional engagement. For me, it's a very emotional, historical industry that we focus on, or that we work in. So I like to really bridge that connection with our community and our customers about having that close tie to your food.
It's beautiful. Ashley, how much time do you spend creating content, and do you have any staff to help with that?
When I did have staff, we did work on it together, and it was nice to get like different points of view. But right now, I probably spend about an hour a day developing a post. And every opportunity that I go down to my boat, anytime I open a can of tuna or make a charcuterie board, so it takes me about an hour to like draft a post. But it takes me like every day, every time is a photo opportunity. So yeah.
And it's all you? You don't
It's
really
just
staff
me.
having you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever there's like action shots on our boat, my husband takes pictures because I am not on the boat. So
That's great.
yeah.
That's great. How about you, Cody?
So we're running 1 to 2 hours a day on content generation. Part of that is TikTok. So TikTok is those 15-second videos take a lot of time to actually put together, especially if there happens to, for TikTok to work for you, it needs to be very engaging, and the viewer has to stay on. So you further up in the algorithm, the longer they watch. So a lot of the best way I found to make a viewer engage is that there needs to be a lot of very rapid transitions that coincide with music changes, which means that every time you're trying to shoot something, so if it's a 15-second video but it has 10 to 15 parts in it, that's a lot of time to capture all of those videos and then edit them together.
And edit them in sync.
In sync,
That's,
yeah.
If you have like a poor in sync quality,
Then it doesn't.
then they're not the boy band of the year.
So
That's the
between
quote of the day.
yeah, so and we're also operating on 3 different platforms. So there's Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. The same content could theoretically be used on all 3 platforms, but the captioning, the hashtagging is all going to be different from one platform to the next, because our audience on each of those platforms has a very different analytic. So depending on what might be acceptable on TikTok is not going to translate necessarily to Facebook. And so we would have to then rewrite a caption, redo all the hashtags, and find something that fits that audience. So when we're posting there, it's going to resonate with the audience that's viewing it, or the video that might make it onto TikTok maybe isn't something that's going to resonate on Instagram or Facebook, and so I need an entirely different post that is going to be used there. We're also posting multiple times a day, keeping stories going, so as we're going throughout the day, there's a lot of little snippets of video, photographs that are then being posted into the story, just so people can kind of stay up with what's actually happening through your day on the farm. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Is that all when little farmers napping, or?
Sometimes else.
There's a lot of like conversations on the couch at the end of the day, like editing the next day or several days posts. It's like, oh, change that. I'm the part that edits, I guess, more than anything. As far as planning and other capacities, just specific to what we're doing and the current work with Remiano, it's really about the scheduling. If you want to, like the 4x4 promotions calendar or general yearly calendar for events, starting there as a framework of something that gives you confidence, if there's any need for confidence in the room, it's just so helpful.
What is 4x4 be?
It's like a promotional calendar. So it's kind of like how the weeks cycle through, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And then you structure off of those quarters. And then
So
if you start building backwards, you'll have so much content you won't even know what to do with.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. But starting backwards is way easier.
So Nick, I know that you have your nonprofit and your for-profit. So are you generating content for both of those, or are they sending content to you, and how much time do you have to spend with those?
A little bit of both. So on the nonprofit side, so for the accounts that I own and fully control, I would say it probably spends around an hour a day. I would say half of that, if not all of it, on some days is research, like very scrolling through social media, but not from an enjoyment perspective. When you start managing like a multitude of social media, your desire to interact with it on a pleasure basis is just kind of goes down into the basement, and which I guess that's fine. I think that's overall kind of a healthy thing, healthy way to force you off of it. But so for those nonprofit accounts, because it is so like story and narrative driven, nice photography is important for whatever you're doing. But when you are really kind of like researching all that narrative and like what's getting the best interaction on other organizations, that does require a little bit more research. And so I save a bunch of posts. I'm very meticulous with organizing all of those saved posts so that I can go back to them whenever I need to. For the contracted for-profit accounts that I run, almost all of them are across the country. In Atlanta, because I lived there. I'm from here, but I was there for 16 years. So a lot of these are brands that I started and that they just contracted me to stay on because I know the brand's voice the best. So those ones, it's a little trickier because I'm obviously not there to take the photos. So I have systems developed with all of those accounts, and I appoint people, and there are expectations that are established on what they're supposed to be turning around to me, and they're all going into shareable folders. And then I run the copywriting through one of their team members to ensure the quality and the accurateness of the statements that I'm making. And then I'll do the posting. And so those accounts, I usually spend about 4-hour blips on them. So what I do is I will, after I go through and if I've assumed all the content that I need for that workload, then I'll just sit down, I'll develop all the content. I use a program called Later. I think it's a really good, like if you are diving into a scheduling program and you're looking at third-party apps, Later is probably the most user-friendly out there. It's not just like specific to Instagram or Facebook, you can link all of your accounts on there. And so I have a calendar library and that I draw all of the content over, and then I literally just view it in a calendar format. And so I can see all the posts for the entire month on there. And then it gives me grid previews, so I make sure that the grid consistency, so like when you open up an Instagram account, that it's nice to kind of see a kind of nicely curated account. So for some brands, like that's obviously not what like you guys are going for, but for these like hospitality brands, if it's a hotel, they have very specific desires on their aesthetics, and so I try and match whatever they are doing within their location and try and transfer that aesthetic over into like, what if a consumer was just pulling up their profile? You want to give them the same vibe as if they were walking in the door to the hotel. So for those accounts, it's probably about 8 hours total a month for each one. Every other week I'll manage them, and then I load content on a weekly, for a week at a time. I'll go back and I'll look at the analytics to make sure that the posting times are correct, because it gives me a graph on like when the best times to post, when my interactions were happening.
Later.
Mm-hmm.
That's the really great added value of Later.
And so then like each account has different analytics. So like some of the restaurant accounts, like their peak posting times are totally different than the hotel accounts, because it's just a different audience. So for those contracted accounts, the majority of my work, since I'm not taking the photos, generating all of the content, it becomes a lot more analytical. And so what I spend a lot of time on is making sure that I'm understanding the audience, the demographics, the age ranges. I'm also looking at the like geographical interactions, because it shows me like the exact locations of the people interacting with the post, because Big Brother these days. Which you can really kind of lean into, I mean, like this data is there obviously for these larger corporations like Meta to utilize to their own benefit, but it's also largely available to us too. And so it's just a matter of like finding out where that data lives and then using it to your own advantage. And so audience is super important to me, and I pay really close attention to that. And then I combine that audience metric with industry statistics. So I look at a lot of like statistics and reports that are like for restaurants, for example. And I monitor like which are my best like sales categories. So like for just restaurants in general, a 32-year-old female is the best target audience. It's been that way for about 6 years. So yeah, so that's kind of my thing. I'm like a lot of storytelling on my own account side, and then super heavy on the analytics and audience metering on the contracted side.
Thank you. Aaron, are you twisting arms to get content sent to you at staff meetings?
It depends. It
Okay.
depends. As far as how much time we spend, it can be anywhere from like 10 to 15 hours a week. My work week generally is Mondays. I meet with my buyers. I'm also a buyer, so the three of us meet, and we talk about, again, our seasonal calendar that shows, what departments are in season, any events that we have going on that we're a part of or participating in, any holidays. From there, we'll decide what kind of campaign. We generally work 1 to 2 months in advance. That's a goal. It's sometimes hard to achieve that, but generally I would say 30 days in advance generally. So I meet with the buyers. We talk about what we want to promote, whether it be one of our warehouse sales or a season opener like camping or cycling, or we have ocean fishing opener coming up, So we talk about these different openers. We talk about how that correlates to the inventory we have. We talk about our inventory levels, if any departments are sitting heavy, we need to move some numbers down to get them to where they need to be. But from there, we'll decide what we want to create a campaign on. Then typically Wednesday is when my marketing person comes in. She generally works remotely, but she'll come in and we'll talk with my buyers about what we use a program called Asana. It's a great tasking program. I've been using that for probably 10 years now. When you have multiple stores, again, like nonprofits, at different remote locations, we use it for doing retail price changes, to marketing, to employee value, everything. It's just a great communications platform, especially if you're dealing with people that are remote. So anyway, when I meet with my buyers on Monday, we'll create a campaign in the marketing section of our Asana and kind of build what we want. And then Tuesday we meet our marketing person and we talk about how we want to advertise that, whether it's going to be on social media or traditional media, or we're going to throw some money in Google AdWords. And then we'll get all those details, and then we got to make sure that my buyers supply our marketing person with all the correct images. I mean, we really focus on UPC, because if you just search Hoka, one of their shoes, you may see multiple generations. You got to make sure we're promoting the one that we actually just got in. So I make sure it's up to my buyers to create links or to pull all the images. We also have a lot of our vendors. We have a B2B portal that gives us a lot of those images and videos to use. That's handy. So when I meet with my buyer, we'll make sure, or meet with my marketing person on Wednesday, we'll make sure they have all that information, and then from there we'll talk about where we want to advertise it, and if we're going to do a paid ad on it, what that demographic is going to look like. And from there, we generally have our marketing person, her due dates are typically Thursdays, mainly because Fridays we're thinking about the weekend and I don't want to deal with that. And I'm teaching firearms classes on Fridays too, typically. So we'll have our due dates on Thursdays, and typically they'll launch the following week or further. That's pretty much what it looks like. We have little I forget what they're called, things we put on our website. So we use our Facebook audiences, we use lookalike audiences. We're great at finding a group of people that aren't following you that mimics who's following you. So when we do our paid campaigns, we don't really use traditional media that often, rarely. It's pretty much Google AdWords, social media marketing. Yeah, and then we also have a pretty extensive email campaign just because we have memberships and a lot of our customers have memberships, and because we could pull the data that they're already into and feed them sales and deals on the stuff they already like, it's a really successful way for us to market what we have.
When you're doing those plans, how often are you doing sales-centric postings? Is that a part of the formula?
Yeah, again, going back to our communications calendar, you know, if it's a season that's starting, it could be camping, it could be fishing, hunting season. Typically, the sales-centric posts for those are going to be 2 to 4 weeks out before the season starts. Cool to promote because that's when people are looking to get the gear. When the season's already here, they have the gear. So when it comes to season openers, our sales-centric posts are typically 2 to 4 weeks out from the opener. If there's a specific event that we have going on, a warehouse sale, a kayak demo, whatever, those posts are typically the week leading up to that event. Yeah, and we definitely we got to drop in educational and feel good, and all our posts, you know, basically the end result has to be something that has to be high quality, good resolution, fun, and really have a positive impact in 6 seconds or less. If it doesn't have that, you know, they're moving on, you know. So that's been kind of a more recent discovery in what we do. So all our videos or photos or anything, everything's geared to strike some type of positive emotion in 6 seconds or less.
6 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Yep. How about you, Ashley? How often do you do sales-centric posts? Because you have some great action shots, and talk to us about that.
I guess, I don't know, I guess before a market, we really focus on what we're bringing to market that week. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so it's not really part of your specific planning, it's more of an organic, here's what we have.
It's whenever we'll be somewhere, we like to let people know before we get there what we're gonna be bringing. As far as like seasons, we always like build up a lot around the opening of craft season, because people are crazy for it. So we like to let people know where we're at, just educating them and like when the season will officially be open, and like images of like our team like working on our craft gear on our boat. But yeah, other than that, it's just an organic thing that we'll do occasionally.
Alright, nice. How about, Nick, you talked about using Asana, and well, you talked about later, but I saw that you were rah-rahing for Asana too. Are there other tools that you use that would be helpful in your?
No, I'm a huge Asana fan. I'm an Asana ambassador. I went through all of their training and stuff to become like a proctor and help other companies implement it. It's a super robust project management tool. Has lots of awesome like integrations to other platforms, so it's just great for remote teams and teams like, you know, worked on a project with Thomas to, you know, create a new like vision document for their business, and you know, we use Asana for that just to keep it all organized. But you know, like later is probably one of my primary tools. Aside from that, like, you know, the Meta Business Suite it's frustrating because they change it on a pretty regular basis. And it seems to be progressively getting more challenging to work with. But you know, so the Meta Business Suite, like as frustrating and clunky as it can be to navigate, like just try and force yourself to use that. I always recommend to people, you know, it's pretty easy to fall into the habit when you're running social media for a business account is to just like, you know, just pick pick up your phone and do it all on your phone because that's what you're most used to when you're browsing social media. But all of these platforms have web-based, so log onto your laptop, see it on there, you have a bigger view of everything that you're posting, you get analytics panels on the side, so get in the habit of using the desktop or laptop interface for what you're doing, and then that'll get you more used to using these business suite sides of all the platforms so that you can really get familiar with the analytics as you're posting. So yeah, later is my primary program. Aside from that, we do use Asana for some of our teams to share content and copywriting. Aside from that, we sense the image files because we like to preserve the highest resolution. We use WeTransfer and things like that just because it's my cloud storage is constantly going over capacity. So we like to use a direct transfer system like WeTransfer.
How about Thomas and Cody? Do you guys use a specific system? I know I didn't assign you this question, sorry, but Frank isn't here, so.
No.
What do you guys use to manage all of your accounts and the different businesses?
So since the audience is different for each of our accounts, we're generally using that platform to manage the account. We do have the Meta Suite. It's not the best. So I don't generally work out of that. Would rather just work out of each platform individually. We utilize TikTok heavily for video editing, however. It's really user-friendly. It also is, of all of the platforms, it is the one that has the most features that you can utilize within it, especially with the newest update. And if you want to put music into anything, TikTok is the best one. It has the most licensed music that you can utilize. Things get touchy when you go to save it over and then transfer it into.
I think it's that they don't have license restrictions.
Yeah, well, that's probably the main thing.
It's just all license.
It's just there. Once in a while something gets taken off. But
Every now and then, someone goes to work.
The real challenge with utilizing TikTok to generate your video content, however, is the watermarking. Because TikTok content is watermarked with that nice little TikTok. Unless you go into, currently the workaround to that is that you actually go into the full screen preview, video screen record, and then save it, put it into a 9x16, and use that to transfer it onto your platform. Yes.
You can Google that, right?
Yes, you can Google that.
Yeah, it's like the #1 hack.
Yeah, the challenge is that if you transfer TikTok content onto the Meta platforms, the algorithm will not push anything that has a TikTok watermark on it. So you need to have your video not have that watermark, so that way the algorithm will push it.
Thanks. Okay, so speaking
And that
of
plays with written content too, just putting that out there. So if you're on Facebook, including the words like TikTok in your caption, that'll actually bump you down in the algorithm because they do have AI that searches for other platforms' word uses, and they take those out of the top running algorithms. So just be aware of that.
actively suppress that.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of TikTok, Cody, I don't know how to say this on a recording. It's maybe a little spicy. Your brand is a little spicy on TikTok.
Yes.
So, are there any topics that are off topic that we just have to stay away from?
So I would guess on TikTok, not so much. On TikTok, I mean, there's certain parameters that I don't go outside of. Obviously, you're going to get community guideline violations for certain things.
Like driving while.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So there's also things where, if you're streaming live, you can't be driving while you're streaming. I discovered that one because I was doing a lambing check and I got banned from streaming live for a week because.
Were you driving the tractor?
I was driving the Kubota, so it was a little bit too, but apparently I was going a little too fast. Yeah, AI caught that. I mean, so there are certain things there are areas that I won't go into. Like I'm not going to anthropomorphize animals on there because that would generally move me into a part of the algorithm that's going to become very problematic for my day. So there are things to, but I mean, generally within TikTok, no. There's a lot I'm pretty willing to do and discuss most things on there. And that the TikTok brand is really broad. Like there are very thirsty thirst traps that I make. But then there's also like Jewish education. So I have ones where, you know, we're discussing, you know, Jewish practice, you know, things from the Talmud, and then also agriculture. So we would have like a very heavy parts, and right now I'm running a whole like judging contest where I posted a series of sheep and people are placing them and giving me their placings, and then I'll do an official placing on the sheep and explain how they're evaluated and why they're placed that way. And we do things, you know, within that ag education realm, I do a lot of things relating to soil health or animal husbandry. The focus is more on sheep than on dairy, mostly because the pushback you get from people that are involved in animal rights is much less when you do sheep, and I only have so many hours in my day to moderate my comment section. I don't want my day to be consumed by that. And so also the sheep industry is just like so happy that anyone is talking about sheep on TikTok, because there aren't like great sheep influencers. The dairy industry has tons of dairy influencers. So the sheep industry is much more like excited and happy. So like they're gonna also push your and promote your content because they're just glad that someone's talking about wool and micron counts, and that's like, you know, they're stoked. So the national, I get a lot of promotion from the national job on wool because they're just very actively engaged in what's happening on my channel.
Well, and you also like, you know, you do promote a lot of imagery of your like the cuts of meat that you sell, but you don't actually focus on the like on the herd.
No.
So you create this like separation so that you don't like get any negative emotional
yes.
attack.
And we do, obviously, the TikTok brand is a separate handle. It's Unorthodox Farm Daddy, it's its own separate area, but I generally wear Foggy Bottoms merch, and so it does drive people to the Foggy Bottoms brand. We saw the majority of our merchandise is sold because of that connection to TikTok. So people are being driven to the Foggy Bottoms brand to buy merch and wool and stuff like that. They can't buy meat because we don't ship, but that's, you know, kind of the correlation there. Also, those traps push up your viewer, and TikTok can be monetized. So the more people that engage with those posts, the more money you can make off of them if it's monetized.
So he's going for the money.
Okay.
Got this.
For me. Ashley, you have a little different take on your social media branding though. But are there off-limit topics for you?
I don't know. Everything in my industry is very political or controversial. So people kind of we try and do a lot of like community education on our fisheries and what sustainable fishing looks like and how we practice it here in the United States. So anything that I say could like spur a negative comment. But one of the things we do try and focus on is like just really being polite to potential viewers that might not want to see a bloody fish or a fish like all over our deck or anything like that. So we're really like careful and cautious and respectful of everybody who's viewing our videos and our pictures. To make sure that it's something that they don't like get too emotional over, I guess. So yeah, so we're careful.
How about you, Erin? You have some traps to avoid, I would say.
Yeah. When we first started out on social media, way back in 2011, 12, you know, we just had one business page, and we were getting some good followers, and anyway, we started getting into hunting season, and one of our customers shot a great buck and posted it on our social media. We're like, and we found out immediately this is a whole different crowd, you know. So I look at my Ukiah store where they're 60% hunting and fishing as far as, you know, our customer base. However, on social media, you know, and they're typically males in their 30s to 50s, maybe kind of center right a little bit, you know. But you look at our social media and it's primarily ladies in their 20s to 40s, maybe center left as far, you know. So I'm trying to think about, you have a huge customer base here, but we can't market to them on social media. They all have social media accounts. How do we reach them? So at that point, we decided to create a Pacific Outfitters hook and bullet page. So that way, those people who are into hunting and fishing and dead fish and whatnot, you know, they're not going to be offended seeing it. And you know, it is a big market for us, especially down in Mendocino County. And it does allow us to promote that industry, the hunting and fishing industry, in a way that doesn't offend the bulk of our followers on our Pacific Outfitters standalone page. So we kind of generally don't want to split your page, you know, your brand up, but because those were two completely separate categories and very important categories to us, we decided to do that, and it's been working out. It's been a workaround. With that said, you know, there's very strict firearm and ammunition, what you can't do on social media. So that becomes, even like, you know, we put 1,000 people a year through our firearms classes. And that's all about firearm safety and training, being a responsible gun owner. And even if you try to promote that, just because it's tied to firearms, you cannot promote anything even related to firearm safety. Which is interesting, but it's, you know, it's the cards we're dealt, so we just have to play with the cards we're dealt. But that's how we did it. We have our Pacific Outfitters page and our Pacific Outfitters hook and bullet, and we're able to break up the posts so as to not offend, you know, our two major types of customers.
And then you
That's
also
what
have a
we're doing.
nonprofit, of course,
Yeah.
affiliated with your.
Yeah, I got the Pack Out Green team, and that's kind of my side project that I just work on myself at night when the kid goes to bed, you know. And that's just posting cleanup reports and future cleanups, and you know, that's been nice. And our main page does promote those cleanups as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, the last posed question that I have, and then you all think of your questions, okay? So the last question that I have is, how about your tip for boosting SEO, search engine optimization?
It's gotten a lot easier. So I would say, you know, 5 to 8 years ago, like SEO was not something that anybody like was aware of. So the entire industry of like web development has become like almost totally DIY. So the age of having to hire a web developer that knew how to, you know, code, and they were coding out your whole website, that's really in the past at this point. So the developing your own like web tools is really in the user's hands. So using platforms like Squarespace has one of the most robust SEO assistance platforms. And it's really, you know, there's so many tools online. You'll also be getting a lot of emails probably in your business accounts from just people cold calling and offering to like build out your SEO, or saying like, I just visited your website. I think, you know, I would love to give you a free audit. Like, stay away from all of that. Most of those emails are coming from out of the country, and, you know, they're just operating these big office farms, and they're just going down the list. But a lot of these things are very like user generated. So it's really important that the SEO comes from you personally, because you're the best one that knows your audience, and this is all, you know, keyword based. So it's really, you're just putting words basically in the background of your presence, and those words are only being picked up by search engines. So that's kind of SEO in a nutshell. So like if you were to build a website on Squarespace, there's an entire section that you just click SEO. It has a whole AI tool now that's attached to it where it like reviews all the content on your site, generates its own ideas for what needs to be put in the background of your site, and then you can go in and you can edit those yourself. And the rule of thumb with SEO is the more the better. So if you're like a bakery, don't just stop with like bakery, bread, coffee, like go all out, like just absolutely all out. Because like everything that you sell, everything that connects the consumer with your business, that is what SEO is. So like I just always, and for it's not really considered shady practice, but I mean I even do it with ours, like look at your competitors. And so go to your competitor's website, pick up keywords from their site, put it in the background of your own, so that when somebody does go to search for something that your competitor might have more of, you're still coming up at the top. So it's a little bit of like a shell game. But SEO is one of the most powerful tools right now in web development and online presence. So like cannot overstate that enough. It's also something you can do for free. So just like any other part of any industry, there's always going to be people offering to do this for you at a premium, but this literally is keywords. So that is, if you would like to pay for that, that's obviously your prerogative, but it's definitely something that any user can do on their own. And then if you combine that with, like, if you do have a website, very much encourage you to like get a Google like console account set up. Because then once you get that, the verification takes a while. I think it takes like a week for it to aggregate the data. Google Admin Console, I think, is kind of what it's taglined as. Then you get this back-end view of what every single person has searched to get to your page. So it gives you this whole view of like the pathway that the user took from the time they opened the search engine, and then when they got to your site, and then how they navigated through your site. And it'll give you examples of where your most effective SEO is to lead to your most effective mission. So like these, again, it's the same thing I was saying with Meta, like Google provides these tools as well, and gives you the access to this data. It's, and there's so many, like there's such a, YouTube plays such a big role in this like DIY kind of industry that we're in these days. Like I use YouTube on a daily basis to look for things. And now YouTube in my work, just figuring out how to do things, that's been replaced by ChatGPT for me. So any question that I have or problem I'm trying to solve, ChatGPT has like a permanent pane on my screen, and I just have a running conversation with it, with a robot, and it is almost always right. So you can ask ChatGPT, which is a free service, to what your best SEO keywords are, and it'll bump out a whole block for you in half a second. You can ask it to keep doing that with a little bit more direction, and then it'll give you 500 more SEO terms. So utilize the AI that's being developed. It's being built for this industry specifically, for online and electronic communications.
What was that the Google Admin
Yeah, I believe it's the Google Admin Console.
console? Okay.
Yeah, if you just search like Google SEO management, it'll pop up. So yeah, the Google SEO management tools combined with AI like ChatGPT are really kind of what you need to do. And you can even ask these AI chatbots like ChatGPT, like after it gives you these SEO words, you just ask it like, how do I put this on my Squarespace site? And it'll like give you a whole bullet point walkthrough, and yeah, so use the robots. I mean, that's what they're built for.
How exactly are you phrasing that? Do you like copy paste the website so it can check out the website and then tell you?
So chatbots aren't, so the majority of chatbots are restricted from actually searching the internet. So that's the thing. So these chatbots are being developed by these larger media, information organizations. So they've already aggregated all of that information and then put it into these like massive servers that are powering these AI chatbots. So a lot of the chatbots are restricted from searching the internet. So you really have to give it a little bit of a runway to go on. There's also a bunch of great blogs out there that actually like advise you on what the best prompts are to give the AI tool. And so it just takes a little bit of playing with and going back and forth. If you're not happy with the first result, tell it exactly why you're not happy and it'll give you a full new result.
Awesome.
It's the best employee I have.
It writes great obits.
Absolutely. I prompted it to write an entire business plan. It turned around like a 13-page business plan for me in a matter of like 3 seconds. I asked it to develop a whole new marketing strategy for me for a 2-year time period, and it gave that to me in a heartbeat. And is it perfect? Absolutely not, because it's not a human, and it lacks that emotional connection and thought process. But it is really helpful to like at least give you the framework, and that's where most people like hit that mental roadblock. It's like, okay, I don't even know where to start. But let it give you that like scaffolding, and then just go in there and fill the holes, and then by that time you've saved, you're doing 10% of the work, and then you can focus in the social media realm on going out there and really curating and getting the best content, imagery, and videos. And then you have these nice AI tools that are doing all this background work.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
There's I've been using recently AnyWord. I don't know if you tried that, but to write radio scripts. Holy cow! I mean, I did it with our kayak demo. I just put basically the location, the dates, where it is, what's going to be there, and just clicked it, and I wrote this beautiful 30-second radio script that was way better than anything I can do. Not only that, but there's different. You can program a radio script to the person seeking a deal, where you can click on the person who's more of just the outdoor person. So your script can be guided, geared more towards the person in the outdoors or more towards the deal seeker. Also, I took that radio script, and then if you're gonna do a social media post, you can put that script in there that it created. I had to tweak it just a little bit, just as you were saying. But it'll pull key bullet points out for your content on your social media post, and all the important details and worded just perfectly. So I've been really happy.
Yeah, and like SEO, I think the way that you can kind of conceptualize it too, like it's like the most visible type of SEO are the use of hashtags. So like hashtags are something that you actually see. They're obviously not in the background, but like hashtags, the algorithm, like you can search for specific hashtags and it'll pull that up. But the algorithm is also utilizing that hashtag data, and it takes your user data based on your browsing history, which posts you linger on the longest, that might have similar hashtags, and then it's putting your post that matches up with those similar hashtags higher up in that person's algorithm. And so that's really how the algorithm interacts with hashtags. And like, so, it gets a little messy if you have a ton of hashtags in your posts. So like, I tend to not like to embed them in my captioning. It works just as well if you then, after you post, then go in and leave a comment that has all the hashtags embedded in there. It will get lost eventually in all the other comments people are leaving, but it's still, the algorithm is still grabbing it to the same extent as if you added it in your caption. Yeah.
If you
Are you saying if you hashtag with your industry more and comment on those specific posts, it will make mine show up higher on those people, or?
Yeah, so you can definitely, like, the more, you know, hashtags are brand associated, but you also can take a look, like, so TikTok actually does a really good job at this. You can see which hashtags are trending the most. And so you'll see these random posts, like somebody posting a photo of their new dog, and they have like hashtag Honda Challenge 2023. And it seems odd, but that's a trending hashtag. So they've actually done the research, or they're using a posting platform that's doing that for them. So like Later, also another plug for Later, they have a recommended hashtag generator that lines up with the content that you're trying to post and what's trending online. So that's like, yeah, the hashtags are just there solely from the algorithm's perspective to help figure out where to place you.
TikTok has changed its algorithm a little bit in the recent update, where it's actually pulling, so not just from hashtags any longer, but also from your captioning. So, which is one of the reasons, aside from just accessibility, but you should, you know, be putting captioning on all of your TikTok videos, and even for Instagram and that. But when you're generating that captioning, that is also being used by the algorithm to match it. So if you're referencing things like soil health, and it knows that you're someone that looks up a lot of farming or gardening, it's going to pull things from that captioning that relates to what you have a tendency to look for. And also, if you're adding, so that's just like the captioning goes along with you if you're doing a video where you're talking, right? But if you also, you know, you can add text, and so you'll notice in a lot of videos that they have text that it tells the story of what's happening in the video, but also that is helping the algorithm grab that video and get it to people that have that same interest. So as you know, one platform does, eventually the others will sort of follow along. So making sure that you're kind of adding that in will help move those up.
And that applies for even like stories. So like Instagram stories is one of like, it's been proven to be one of the most watched aspects of social media platforms these days. And so like when you are posting stories, because it's really easy, it's like effortless, they figured out a way to even remove like the need to move your thumb up and down. You know, you can just open up a story, automatically flips through these slides. I even find it very enjoyable. But when you're making these stories, like on Instagram, you can add hashtags, you can add, like, you can tag other accounts, things like that. You can move those text boxes out of the frame, or you can put another image or video on top of it. And so that's kind of like you're doing your own little SEO per story. And you can do as much as you want. I think there's a limit of like 20 accounts that you can ghost tag on an Instagram story. But
Those tagging, you covered them up.
yeah.
Okay.
So the viewer can't see that you've tagged or added these hashtags, but the algorithm sees it.
Is there a benefit to doing that you found?
Absolutely. So
Aesthetics.
so the hashtags, you know, we already talked about that. Tagging other users in your stories is really important from the perspective that it's a lot cleaner for them to be able to repost your stories on their own stories. You can't do that otherwise. So if somebody hasn't tagged you, you know, you'll be viewing their story, and you push the share button, it'll just give you an option of like who to direct message it to in your contacts. If you've been tagged in that, it gives you the option at the top of that list to add this to your story. So you can only add other stories to your own story if you've been tagged in it or it's something that you've personally generated. So that's why I do that, because you just like hope that somebody else reposts it. Even
Should
though
I
they're
ghost
not.
tag you guys on my story?
Go for it.
Okay.
So you
Totally
can,
ghost tag. Okay.
so you can ghost tag ghost tag, and then you ghost hashtag as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
As much as you want, and you know, you can literally, it's as simple, it's like low tech, it's just one of those like workarounds. Like, you know, you're making your story, doing the layout, you see the words on the screen, and you just drag it and kind of toss it to the side, and it disappears out of the frame. But it's still actively there. So, or you can, like, if you're going to post a story video, you've got the video in your camera roll, you go and post it to the story, you can add whatever text you want, and then you can actually, like, use the feature to go back into your camera roll, add another video, and you can, like, stretch it over that screen. And so there's a lot of little tricks and ways that you can do it. There's a wealth of information online, but yeah, it's like really that's what's really important for stories is making sure that you're going a little bit beyond, not just relying on somebody to, like, you know, happen to scroll by it, because, you know, we're familiar when you open up Instagram, there's a gazillion little bubbles on top, right? Most people aren't scrolling through those to find their favorite account, they're just starting at the beginning. And the beginning is what the algorithm is telling you to start at.
Any questions for our panelists?
Yeah, I've got two real quick. I know that the platforms have their own captioning that they auto-generate. Do you have a favorite captioning app that you like to use so it's not so impersonal?
I use the TikTok, just their captioning app, and then I go in and correct it.
Okay.
Because it's not going to, especially if you're like, if it's a subject specific, they're gonna spell all sorts of weird things in there. So we'll go in and then we'll edit that captioning. I personally, my preference is just the solid black background with the white text over it. It's really clean, it's easy to read. For some reason, the algorithm doesn't prefer that right now on TikTok. Its preference is that you use the white one with the black outline, which I find incredibly annoying and not as easy to read. So if it's something that I try to balance that between, is there really very little text where the captioning maybe isn't as important to the overall story of the video, that I can use that one and just kind of hide it. But if it's something where I'm discussing, you know, it's an educational video, then I'm just gonna use the black background with the text. I put it down low to the left, and I make sure that in the preview that whatever I captioned and hashtag isn't going to cover that up, because the whole reason for having it there is for people that are deaf or hard of hearing. And I have quite a few followers I know on TikTok as well as Instagram that do rely on that captioning to enjoy those videos, so I want to make sure that they are as accessible as possible to everyone.
And I'd like to add on to that, like, just as important as captioning, so there is something really big that people don't focus on, which are like making sure that any of your content or your web presence is like ADA compliant. And that information is all accessible on the ADA website. And so in addition to like captioning to like service the deaf or hard of hearing audience, it's also really important, especially on, I don't think they have the feature on Instagram or on TikTok, but they do on Instagram and Facebook, is there's like an alt image thing right there. And so you basically just like are writing in a description of the image that you're posting, and that is for blind community members. And so that's something I always do. And I've gotten some feedback. Once I started doing it, I didn't realize that I had so many followers that were sight impaired. And so they're scrolling through total dictation services.
So follow-up question I have is, and it may not apply to all of you, but do you repost old posts for new followers? Not necessarily story stuff, because like I'm an interior designer, so not everybody has seen every single project, so if it's way down a few months ago, is that still okay, or is that a no-no now?
I'll start with that. For TikTok, absolutely, because I don't want to recreate everything all the time. So if it's something from a year ago that's still fairly relevant, and maybe I don't have time to generate content that day because life happens, and we have a 4-year-old, and that takes a lot of time. like, so yeah, I might, reuse content there. For Foggy Bob's Voice, we almost never, well, I shouldn't say that. We generally don't reuse content because with the farm, there's always something changing, something new, but we will go back to like old family photos, right? So there are family photos from, 100 years ago that we might reuse, and we might reuse that post or update it slightly because that story is still the same and maybe people haven't seen it or they've forgotten about it. A lot happens and social media is just a snippet in time that we're looking at as a viewer, and so we'll reuse that.
We also reuse like sales-specific images, so people know, like, oh, I see this image, I'm associating with a sale, so therefore I'm going to read the sale. And so for our weekly special that we do each week, people are looking either for an image with the bag or me holding a piece of meat. Typically, is what it is.
How about you, Ashley? Do you ever
Yeah,
reuse content?
I reuse content, I usually try and space it out about a year. But especially like introductions. So I have a picture of me almost exactly like this, wearing my face mask, and it just says support Loca because the L is the, but it's just like, I repost that about once every, I try and rest it for a good year. But just to like reintroduce myself to our followers.
Nice.
I will say one thing, make sure if it has you in it, you haven't physically changed too much in that year. I posted one where I didn't have the beard and some people on TikTok really flipped out. So,
It was a thirst trap.
it was very noticed, so.
I have a question for Nick and then a question for the group. For Nick, I was wondering, with your nonprofit work, how do you measure success in funneling viewers to your members? Is it just like getting member feedback, or is there a way you quantify how well that's going?
A little bit. I mean, it depends on the type of posting that I'm doing. So some of these back-end analytics will give me like click-through reports. So it'll actually show me especially that's one of the great things on the back end about stories is that you do get that when you're posting, if you're the creator and you look back at your stories, then you can click over to the little tab and it immediately gives you the analytics behind that post. So it shows you the click-through rate, what they're actually clicking on if you have multiple links within your post, if they're following through to your account or somebody else's account. So that's kind of a main driver, but it is really just kind of, I measure a lot of the success for the client or the member based on how well the original post is performing. And then it is a lot of communication with them and making sure that if my performance is going up, that theirs should be sort of, coming up at a similar rate. It's a little tricky. I would say, more often than not, for a lot of the people that are members of mine, we will go through and we will perform audits together. And which is just it takes about 6 hours sitting side by side, and we just go through the whole shebang for an annual report on how well their performance was. We identify their audience and things like that. So it is just kind of about communication and seeing how they're doing, if they're happy with the performance. But yeah, I would say that again is just a pretty big analytics driven thing. You can really track everybody's activities, what they're doing when they're interacting with your content.
And then my question for the group was, just kind of at the end of the day for your business bottom line, how would you rank the different platforms in terms of which ones are the most worthwhile? I guess for organic, unpaid content, and then which ones kind of get you the best bang for your buck with paid ads?
Awesome.
And I know it's probably very different depending on your business and
For us,
many factors.
Facebook and Instagram are pretty big for us. Google AdWords would be right behind there. I just love running paid ads on social media because of how much we can tailor the audience. We can pick and choose who gets to see it. And at any time, during that, we can make changes. Facebook, Instagram advertising works really well for us. Google AdWords after that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, and the meta world is kind of like when you do paid promotions, if you have like linked accounts with Facebook and Instagram, and you do generate an ad, like it is cross-posting those on both platforms. So like Meta is really kind of running the show when it comes to ads these days. And you do theoretically get a little bit more bang for your buck. It used to be this huge unknown. You had no idea what the return was. But, 10 plus years into this paid promotion post era that we're in, we have more statistics surrounding it. So I know, for example, for every dollar that I spend for a paid ad for a hospitality institution in the Atlanta metro area, my ROI is about $8.50 a customer. So like the return there is verified, successful. I actually see the returns in the locations. And there's ways that you can gauge that return too, which is kind of, like, come visit us, mention that you saw this, really low tech things like that promote the in-person engagement, and then you can kind of like get a little bit of a feel about how many people saw it.
When we did kayak demos and warehouse sales, I would have my cashiers talk about low tech. Here's a piece of paper, TV, social media, Facebook, start giving me tickers. How'd you hear about our sale? And by far it was Facebook and Instagram, totally like ran laps around everything else. So it was a low tech way. It was like, it works.
Yeah, and then TikTok does have paid promotion posts. Theirs are a little bit different. It's they have less targeting capabilities just because they're a newer platform. And theirs are really, you're paying the platform to up the engagement on that specific post. So you have basically two choices. It's improve your following or improve the views on the post. Like TikTok's very cut and dry. TikTok's like the way that they handle currency and payments is also a little trickier because they're like solely app based. So the payments are going through either like Google Pay or Apple Pay, and then you're contending with the fact that they're an overseas company as well, so they've developed their own internal currency. So there's a whole exchange program where you have to buy coins and then use the coins to buy the ads, and it's kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
But Cody likes the coins because he gets them all the time.
Yeah, I get coins. So when you do TikTok Live, people give you gifts, which translates to coins, which then becomes actual U.S. currency.
You convert them to diamonds.
You
and
convert them
then-
to yes,
then
you get
convert
like
them into
roses or weird things, and then you turn into coins, and you convert them into diamonds, and then so many diamonds equal U.S. dollar, and then they deposit in your bank accounts. It's
I was wondering if that was.
it's so
Right.
It's never known.
I would say like for us, Facebook and Instagram are by far the best.
Yeah, but it's our current strategy, right? So
Yeah.
like based upon our strategy, we're trying to sell local.
Yeah.
So those are the followers that we know we have local.
And you can geographically target that.
Right.
with
Yeah.
ads.
Exactly.
Whereas with TikTok, you can't target, and we don't ship beef and lamb and dairy products. So we can send out merchandise, but then it's a global community. So if, like looking at my TikTok analytics, the number 1 city is Eureka on TikTok. Number 4 is Tel Aviv. It is a global community that is following you. So, I'm not shipping a whole lot of Boggy Bottoms merch to Israel. So that's, we have, but most of it is staying local. So that is the challenge with that.
How about you, Ashley? Yeah, I just use Facebook and Instagram. It's been super helpful. And we do, every person that comes to my booth or into the crowd house when we were running it, I would ask, where did you hear about us today? And if it wasn't physically right out front, via a sign, it was always on Facebook or Instagram.
Can I just go back to one thing I think you said, Nick, about cross-posting ads between the two meta platforms. So like, if you're paying for an ad on Facebook, you don't necessarily need to pay to run the same ad on Instagram because there's gonna be some crossover?
Yeah, it depends, definitely, like, and that's the benefit of using the, Meta Business Suite. So as long as your two accounts are part of that suite, then it will post. And it gives you the option of like, do you want to just post to Facebook, or do you want to just post to Instagram, or do you want to do both? And so when you do both, then it gives you like a preview panel, and it shows you how your ad is going to appear on Facebook, on the desktop, on somebody's mobile device, and then the same thing for Instagram. And so it's pushing your ad into people's traditional main feeds. But then now with the advent of stories, it's also taking that ad and putting it into stories. And so if you've noticed, as you're scrolling through stories, there's progressively more and more and more sponsored stuff that appears, which is annoying unless you're the person sponsoring it. And so so it really is, that's kind of why I view the meta ads as kind of the king of the game right now. I mean, that is their goal at the end of the day. We'd love to think that it's all about connecting people, but they're an ad agency at the end of the day. So they're collecting ad revenue off you, and then you're hopefully benefiting from that revenue. But that is the benefit. And then you talked about Google AdWords, which is like a whole different animal, but one of the most powerful, hands down. That is, Lost Coast Outpost, for example. They do not generate that much revenue on their own. The majority of their content is AI driven, and so they're grabbing from other news sources. The local stuff's a little bit more human generated, but almost all of their revenue is derived from their Google ads that they have placed on their site. So Google is paying them a lot of money on a monthly basis to have the amount of ads on their site.
And I tried Google Ads on my own and did a very poor attempt at trying to be successful. And then I found, at the time I was on the board of the Humboldt County Convention Visitors Bureau, and they were using a company called Logical Position for their Google AdWords. And I went and used those guys, and they immediately got my price per click reduced in half. And between that and their commission, I'm still getting way more. So that, while it's nice to be an expert in everything, don't feel like Google AdWords is it's a big animal, and there's
I totally
companies
agree.
that'll help you out too.
And you want to make sure that it aligns with your mission. So if you are like accepting advertisements on your own presence, and these aren't your ads, you want to get paid to like have these billboards on your site. I think we've all like Googled a recipe or something, and you find this recipe page, and you end up having to scroll and scroll and scroll until you find the recipe, because it's just ad after ad, and then half the page is popping up and you can't see anything. Like, that's how those sites are making money, because they are not obviously selling you a recipe, it's there for free. They are like totally trying to go overboard and monetize on your presence, trying to get to that recipe. So there's like big ends of the spectrum that you can land on. But it's a great like passive income if you can tactfully do it in a way that it doesn't impact your brand image.
I wanted to jump back real quick
Yeah.
to a question you asked.
Sure.
So when you asked about topics that are off limits,
Okay.
and there is one actually that's so taboo that I did not think of it. Our site is, and so this is relevant if you're a family business. We use, he is on social media, right? The Tiny Farmer, people see him. We don't often reference his name very often. We have always referred to him as the Tiny Farmer. A lot of that came because he was adopted and his background wasn't necessarily the best, the situation, right? But that's his story to tell. And so we are very conscious of that fact that we don't tell his personal story on social media. People know that he's adopted, but we would never say what the circumstances were, because that's his story. And I think that's something that we see a lot with parenting influencers, is they're very willing to share their children's everything about their child, right? And they'll tell the story, and they don't keep what's personal to that child. And it's also something I've noticed a lot, is that a lot of times people will put things in their kid's voice that they're posting. And we're very conscious of that as well. We might post what he's doing, and we're saying, oh, he's helping move sheep, he's doing this. But we don't post as if it's his voice posting, because once again, that's his voice. At some point, he's going to be a person on social media, and if now he's on social media, he's grown up with us having a social media presence, and we've curated this voice of who Silas is as a person, and now that's not who he is. That's something that he's going to have to contend with as an adult later. And so I think it's something to be very conscious of. And there are a lot of cases of children who maybe grew up early in YouTube that are now having to cope with this fact that they had this YouTube following, their family built this full brand out of it. Maybe they really didn't like it. They weren't happy with it. And now they've been funneled into this as their persona, their personality, and they have to separate from that. And so I think it's something as a parent, if you're running a family business and your child is involved in the business, or it's going to be part of your posts, A, limit how much you're posting them, but also B, be conscious that your voice is not their voice. They are their own independent person, and who they are is going to be different than whatever you show them as. Right now, he loves to dance, so sometimes we have TikTok videos with us dancing. They are my favorite videos to make. It is so much fun. But that's something he likes doing now, and I'm not pressuring him into it. It is like, oh, he's dancing around, he wants to do that, that's fun, let's make a video doing that. But I'm not gonna say, you have to like perform for video or do something. If that's not what he wants to do, but go climb on a haystack, have fun, do your thing, play with your monster trucks. You're not his voice. So I think that's just something to be conscious of.
That's excellent. I cropped him out of your photo.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have a question that really leads into that.
Okay.
It's on safety.
Yeah.
Because obviously, part of storytelling is you're branding yourself, you're putting your face out there. And then actually specifically, because you're the only female on the panel, do you feel sometimes that that's a safety issue for you? And then, for you too, that's you putting out, accessibility and everything. It's different. And then there's duplicate accounts. I mean, how do you manage the safety of it all?
Yeah, I think it's really like our home time is a very private time, and so I really try really hard not to post, a lot of that kind of stuff as far as safety goes. I don't like to share with everybody. I mean, my husband and I, we all went to the same school, but I don't post like, oh, we're going on our first day at Gilbert School, and just stuff like that. But yeah, so it's like I don't put things, I don't ask her to say things, and having that privacy I think is really important. Safety comes up a lot at home though.
Yeah.
And I think if you get the feeling like somebody's leaving odd comments or sending you weird messages, like just block them absolutely, because then they can't see any of your content.
The hard part is like we're businesses, so it's public, and it's so easy to make another one, and that's happened to me. So that's why I'm asking, like, if you have somebody take your pictures and suddenly make a duplicate account and pretend to be you with your content.
And the duplicate accounts is like a growing problem. I'm hoping that the platforms will pick up the pace on how they help users rectify those situations, because we're still looking at significant waiting times, and you have to crowdsource mass reporting on these accounts on your own to do that. It's gotten a little bit better over time. The whole verification thing was supposed to be a fix to that.
Right.
And now that's gone out the window.
Right.
Entirely, because it's, thank you to Elon, it's now every platform, that's just something you pay for. So it is, yeah, identity theft online, and especially on social media, is a real thing. And people use those, you know, mainly for one purpose, is to like entrap your would-be customers into a scam. And then as far as like personal safety, you know, that's really, I think Ashley made a really good point, like really making sure that you're like curating what parts of your life you're presenting online, and making sure that whoever's viewing it has like a total incomplete picture of like who you are, and that it's mainly just you're trying to focus their attention onto the service or the product that you're trying to provide. But yeah, and then anybody in this room that ever has like questions about safety concerns, and like if they need help kind of like maneuvering through that, I think that's like a public service and mutual aid thing that we should all participate in, so like drop me a line.
Yes. And us, obviously, you know, we've run into issues. So because our home is our business, right? The farm address is not posted on anything. And that is a line that we drew.
It's not posted.
Not posted, we will, so if you're coming for a tour, you have to get the address from us. I mean, theoretically, you could drive around Ferndale, probably find us, but Ferndale, you're gonna drive around a lot of back roads at Ferndale, so you'd be pretty dedicated. But we have run into issues where animal rights activists do make a habit of showing up on farms. They will make death threats. We have friends who have had activist groups target their children, share their children's school addresses. So as far as like with our son, we're very careful about that. We're practicing Jews. Like there is a issue there where, especially on TikTok, like we run afoul of anti-Semitism a lot. And so my practice is strictly like delete and block. Like I do not engage in that. I will not engage with them. I will not entertain anything they're saying. It is a delete and block, because that's never going to go anywhere positive. You're not going to change their view. Like I can't do anything there. And same with animal rights activism, homophobia, it is strictly delete and block. And if it gets to a point where it is like they're making genuine threats, then that's a matter of, you call the police department, you report that to authorities. But definitely also, you know, protecting yourself by, don't have your home address listed. If you are, you know, like, if you start doing TikTok and you get people want to send you things, get a PO box. Like that's the best advice there. Like, do not have people send things to your home address. Like, make sure there's a line drawn so that your space is safe for you and your family.
That's excellent advice. Thank you. Okay, to be respectful of everyone's time, I think we're going to draw it there. But thank you so much to each of our panelists. Let's give them a hand, folks.